Okay, so we are going to continue with the judicial branch, and this will be a little shorter session here. I just want to touch on a couple things, some of the recent justices, and then activism and restraint are the major points today. So I listed here the four most recent Supreme Court Chief Justices. You should know a little bit about each of these. You should at least know who our current Chief Justice is, John Roberts. Earl Warren is the most famous of all of these. It's kind of interesting with him if you go to Earl Warren. So he was Chief Justice for a while. He was appointed by Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, who Eisenhower felt that he was appointing a conservative, and it turned out to be a really liberal justice. And so Eisenhower really regretted appointing Earl Warren. Earl Warren, though, is most famous for being the Chief Justice in the Brown v. Board of Education decision, and he convinced everyone to side with overturning separate but equal. And so that was a big win for civil rights, where they said basically that separate but equal is inherently unequal, and overturned Plessy v. Ferguson and Brown v. Board of Education. Earl Warren would be very liberal, and he would be a judge who would display judicial activism. Now, Warren Burger comes in, nothing amazing necessarily about him. He's considered more of a moderate. He was the Chief Justice, though, during the Roe v. Wade case, which obviously has been a very controversial case and still resonates to today. William Rehnquist, interesting though with him, Rehnquist had been on the court for a while. In 1986, when he was switched from an associate justice to Chief Justice. And he had actually been on the court during Roe v. Wade, and he was in the dissent in Roe v. Wade. He felt that a woman's right to have an abortion was not in the Constitution. And so Reagan, who had originally was pro-choice and then became pro-life, he wanted to sort of reward him, I guess, for being pro-life, and so he made him Chief Justice. John Roberts is generally conservative. He is, that he's made a couple decisions that have made the right or conservatives unhappy. Now it's crazy to think that he's been there since 2006. It's been quite a while. When he came in, he was relatively young, maybe about 50. And so he, again, often sides with those other four conservatives. Now, when we're thinking about judges, I want you to really think about this, and this is one of the things I harp on during classes, is judicial activism and judicial restraint. Activism is generally more of a liberal approach, and restraint is generally more conservative. What you want to think of is, and there's a lot of ways to interpret the Constitution. If you believe in judicial activism, you probably believe the Constitution is a living document, that, yeah, maybe the words don't exactly say it a certain way, but times change, and, we're just going to basically let the court, as times change, adapt the interpretation of the Constitution with the times. And so they'll sort of change what the Constitution, I guess if you want to say it, says. I know that I don't mean to be one way or not political, but that's the way some people would approach it. Like, wait a minute, it doesn't say that, so how can the government do that? And the court says, well, it's okay, times change, and whatever it might be. A more conservative person, so in judicial restraint, may say, look, I'm sorry, Constitution doesn't say that. We're going to have a strict construction of it, strict view. We'd say, if we're on the judicial restraint side, we'd say, sorry, you can't have NASA because it doesn't say anything in the Constitution about space travel. Or as a more liberal person would go, okay, well, come on, I didn't know anything about space travel in 1787, and this is dumb. Times change. We'll let the government do it. So it is. Some would say people showing judicial activism sort of make up what they want the Constitution to be. Some would say those showing judicial restraint are too old-fashioned, stuck in their ways, resistant to change. People who believe in judicial restraint generally would say they would be less likely to overturn previous laws or acts of Congress, or they would be more likely to say that if we want the Constitution to be able to do something, then we should amend it, not just sort of make up a new opinion of what the Constitution says. So it's hard. This is something that when we get to individual cases, it is sort of fun to talk about, like what you should do in a certain specific case. So and how you should rule. But just think about that. The judicial activism, just think of it as more sort of changing with the times, and judicial restraint just kind of stick to the actual words and more resistant to change, I guess. And these are the four most recent Chief Justices. And kind of interesting, William Rehnquist, because he switched from an Associate Justice to Chief Justice. When he became Chief Justice, he asked some major designers like Versace or someone like that, I don't know, to design that robe, and he had them add those gold stripes so that it would distinguish him, separate him from the regular justices. But when John Roberts came in, he got rid of that. And finally, this list here was actually part of an AP rubric for one of the College Board tests one year, and it said, what are ways to check the Supreme Court? And this was right off their list. You could really argue with that last one there, but Congress can impeach judges. So Congress can, if judges are doing something wrong, illegal, taking bribes, whatever, Congress can impeach them. Congress, this could be House and Senate, could alter the number of judges, because it doesn't say there are 9 judges in the Constitution. We've had a varying number of judges over the years. So you could bring it to 15 or 21 or whatever, if you wanted to just sort of minimize the ones who are there. You could amend the Constitution. This would be one of the biggest checks on the court, because you could simply get rid of Article 3. You could say there's no more Supreme Court. Or you could put in other amendments. You could say we're going to have term limits, or we're going to have a limit to the term of a justice, or some qualifications or something like that. Congress can change jurisdiction of the lower courts. So basically, if you change the type of cases that are going to be heard by the other federal courts, it would be less likely that the court would hear those cases. Public opinion is supposed to check the court. This is something that is not supposed to really happen, but I guess it does. And so we appoint justices, and we put them there for life so that they are not trying to win elections. But I guess one of the best examples of this would be gay marriage. Whereas 25 years ago, it would be hard. You'd be hard pressed to find many politicians who would support gay marriage. You even take someone like Hillary Clinton, who was opposed to gay marriage, and Bill Clinton, and I'm not sure if Obama was on record of it or not, but people whose opinion on gay marriage definitely changed. Well, the public's opinion on gay marriage changed. And so when the gay marriage decision came out a few years ago, saying that all states have to recognize and have to allow gay marriages, that was a big change. And a lot of people think that's because while the justices were older, they realized that the public opinion on gay marriage had changed a lot. And so that's those are considered to be checks on the court, ways you can limit their impact. And like I said, a little bit shorter today. We will stop there for today and see everybody tomorrow. Thank you.